I'm in a room full of professionals, so I'm not going to tell you like, don't oversubscribe your internet edge, and don't set your DNS forwarders to Google and then oversubscribe that where they block you. So, not saying that that's happened to us. It's not in my slides. So, kind of our decisions when we went to guest Wi-Fi in the stadium. So this is a picture of the old stadium. And so at the top right, you can kind of see our old press box. And that's really where we only had Wi-Fi. It's for the press. And of course, like some at the gates. And so the decisions for this was kind of around funding, what was the schedule, how do we get it in, the design. And so most of those things were around building extra buildings around it. So there's these academic buildings that we built around the stadium. So there's 2 on the sides, 1 on the back. And then, of course, there was like a concourse revamp. Seating was redone. So in the end, with all this technology put in, the Wi-Fi was kind of the cheaper price tag for all of this stuff. So that's kind of how it fit in. Probably the only way we would ever be able to do that. So some of the design, let me see if I can forward. So yeah, we're a handrail design. So on game day, we basically knock down all the SSIDs. We're primarily 2 on campus, but we take down our .1x, and it's just guest on 5 gigahertz. And it's been kind of an issue for some of our staff because they're used to doing .1x and getting on our edge room SSID. So come game day, we turn it off at 6 a.m. Right? And so they've got to learn to like adjust and use VPN to get to campus resources. We kind of like fluctuated that time, but we basically learned that like, okay, 6 a.m. is usually before most of our staff come in, some of the broadcast crews in early, but we wanted to shut it off soon enough that they didn't start using it, and then we turned it off. So, and there's people testing the night before, so we try not to turn it off too soon. Let's see, so scheduling, you would think that that's kind of the easy part. There's a time when you start installing the equipment, there's a time when you're finished. What we learned, so this is kind of a 2-year process of getting all the access points up, was that like access to the places where we need to install equipment was really the hardest part. So like this is a room where they're doing some fiber work to get to some of our wiring closets, and so fill that room with another 10 people, and everybody's just kind of working over each other, and it's kind of a mess. And so I didn't take a picture of the 10 people in there because I didn't want to be the 11th guy in the way taking a picture. But so like just supporting. So with all the IDFs around the campus, we've got like a lot more wiring closets. So getting access to them is harder. So you can see in the background, there's a door. That's one of our wiring closets with stuff stacked in front of it. And so this is right before the Winter Classic, and I needed to get in there to like service a credit card reader for a retailer that's their first time on campus and they're having issues. So those rolls are basically the fake snow that they rolled out for the Winter Classic. So this process was basically a year of tearing down the old press box, bringing up the new press box. During that time, we had this spring game, and during that game, we had to like set up some temporary equipment. So that's like a temporary wall for like an open press box. It's like open air. And so we let them install some of the APs, right? So this is one where, I should have had them move that out of there because it's like an I-beam. It's like, well, it's servicing one person and he's sitting right under it. We'll let him go until they insulate it, right? So that was like 3 days later. So it's all about the scheduling. You got to get your equipment out of there if it's temporary. Thing we didn't expect was a pretty big labor shortage. So between those 3 buildings, the concourse remodel, the seating, 2 dorms going up, we had a big science building. We broke ground on another building, and basically all of the trade workers were busy, and they were like everything was double and triple time because anything you asked for today was triple time work on the weekend. So that obviously pushed some of our scheduling back. Seasonal events. We're Northern Indiana, right? So we have 4 seasons, and in the winter, things freeze, pipes freeze, and So this is a pipe that burst 3 floors above, and basically just soaked that closet and like all of our gear in there. So there's like AV gear, our switch gear, there's some cellular gear to the far right you can't really see, but seasonal issues. And then I had a pretty good one with like events that really changed our schedules. That like, I'm not talking like events like a football game, but like here's like the players' lounge. And so this is like on a Monday evening. This is on a Tuesday evening, followed by a phone call saying, where's our Wi-Fi for our event Wednesday? And we're like, I was just there. There's nothing ready. And so this is a little bit of scramble because we have to get labor around. And this one was actually a pretty easy one. We just didn't know that they were actually going to have an event and get that stuff turned around that fast. Let's see. So devices that show up and the stadium that we kind of knew we'd get some 2.4 only laptops. So we were prepared with some USB Wi-Fi dongles. The tablets are actually our tablets, and we, they're IPTV, and they let you do orders. So we kind of talked them into like not putting those on the Wi-Fi because it was kind of a battle because how are they going to power it? They were really pushing to do it on Wi-Fi, but I guess you'd say we won that one. So let's see, time clocks, right? So there's like a time clock that got moved. So there's like 16 of them. This is where the ushers would like clock in, and these things keep getting moved. And they're like, oh, we really wish we could like put those on Wi-Fi. It'd just be easier for us to move them. And you're like, well, how are you going to power them? You got to power them with the PoE. So it's because the feature's there doesn't mean you have to use it. So let's see, and then ceiling fans. Right, so like some of the buildings adjacent, they use 2.4 gigahertz only ceiling fans, and like I say, our guest network only does 5 gigahertz. So that was like a big complaint for us that like our fans don't work. And it's like, so you could see the button on the bottom left, like that button's wired and powered, but it's not wired and powered to the fan. So it still talks to the fan at 2.4. So it's kind of a hassle. Let's see, ATMs, we really only have 2 in the stadium, and that's, our kind of normal for a football game. They don't get a lot of use. This is an old one, wired. You can see the wired connection in the back. And here's a new one with a new vendor, and like their model is wireless. It took a little negotiating for them to put it on cellular because we redid the cellular in the building also. And so basically we convinced them that like, hey, because you guys move these in different buildings, because we only have 6 home games, so they have to move them around to make them cost effective. Like, if you do them cellular, you won't have to like keep changing SSIDs because our stadium is the only place where we have that guest SSID for the stadium. Studio cameras, this isn't an exact image, but like a 5 gigahertz camera that our production crew uses out in the field. And like, so when we went to 5 gigahertz only in the field and inside the bowl, we just stepped all over their cameras. So, they're like, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can kind of watch it as our RF utilization goes up. So they ended up getting some different cameras, and actually that's not the camera, but there's one that they bought one that was like licensed for 6 gigahertz. So we'll figure out what happens when we start using 6 gigahertz. And then of course, exercise equipment. We have like a lot of like Android tablets that go inside the exercise equipment that's 2.4 gigahertz only. So we battle with some of those. Let's see. And then the things that I didn't know when we started this kind of journey, we apparently power wash everything in the stadium. Like I knew we cleaned up with, leaf blowers and stuff, but like, we probably lost 4 or 5 of these APs that are like 25, 35 foot up. Somebody's up on a lift, hitting out with a power washer, blowing through the seals because there's birds up there, right? They're trying to clean it off. So once we stain the concrete, they want to keep it clean, and they're just blasting a lot of our access points. And then kind of the same way, this is like a vomitory as you're going out to the field. You can see the concrete on the bottom and then some siding. Well, so this is kind of a test area that they were testing, and they're like, well, we want to get it really clean so when everybody walks through and looks at it. But on the other side of that, they're just, there's no flashing, so it was just blasting through. Of course, all of our switch gear is on the other side of that. So it's a couple 20 grand and switchgear just gone. The thing that does get blasted all the time that we haven't had problems with, there's the railings, the handrails. Like, there's like 36 or 38 screws around it and like double sealed around the little 3 junction points. So far, there's no place to knock on wood, but we haven't had any issues with those, with being hit with water. We have had a bunch of them hit with lightning, so we've probably lost 30 of them in one storm, that like a whole region of the stadium. That's kind of what it looks like on the inside. So dual 5, those are like 3802s. We've got a few where we had some cabling issues, and we actually did it to dual 5 gigahertz for a single AP. And of course, like, you need to be able to like service your parts. And so this is one that was like, well, we can move that rack for you. And it's like, well, we can probably make that work. We can get the switch in there until the pieces die and you have to take it out. So it's just a burden to slide it out the front just to get the back. And same goes for, all the other equipment we use. So like this was a 1.5 to 2 year process before we actually got the wireless in. And so we had a lot of temporary gear getting like HVAC and people working in there on some sort of Wi-Fi. And so in this case, we were trying to like save ourselves a little bit of time, and we put some production switches in, in a 1.5 years after like not being climate controlled, eating a lot of dust from the construction, and definitely lots of power issues. Like we lost a few of these 3850s just because they weren't in a good environment. So that was temporary. This is temporary. So these are like APs that kind of like move around. And so we have like a lot of trades workers that are like, they'll just decide to move it. And so it's like, well, they want to listen to Pandora or something. So they like drag the AP down because it's not bolted down. And so you see them like mounted around the lighting fixtures. Like you've seen them like work all their stuff around the AP. Sometimes just throw it off to the side. Like so there's probably still another 15 unplugged somewhere above the ceiling tile that we haven't found. But even our new equipment was moving around. So these are like skids, probably 4 of 8 that came in, and like you can see they're all like staged and numbered, and our partner like did a really good job of like staging these for us. And basically we should have been able to just drop that skid in the area, pull them off one at a time as the numbers were in order, and install them. But this is actually like the 6th or 7th place where these skids were. They just kept getting moved around. And so like they were in these storage trailers. Storage trailers got moved a bunch of times, got moved to different storage trailers. So we just kind of like worked this problem for ourselves where we had to shuffle everything to find access points that need to go in certain areas. So my suggestion would be, if you stage all this stuff, even if you have to walk a little bit further, try to put them in a place so that they don't move around. So even installed equipment moves around. So these are access points on the 9th floor of one of the buildings. And like a year ago, those access points and antennas used to be on the other side of that railing and facing down so that you could get, we would cover the bottom right of the terrace. And so somebody noticed from the 7th floor terrace that, hey, I can see those. And they decided to move them out of the way. So now they're not only not aimed at the terrace, they're like our busiest access points, covering the parking lot from the 9th floor prior to the game. So there's like 150 clients on each of those before the game, and as everybody comes in for the game out of the parking lot, it goes down to about 30. And then shared space. If you have to share space with somebody, and we did in this case, lock your stuff. This is a shared space. Like, we didn't even plan on putting this cabinet here. We were just trying to save a little bit of money because we had these access points, the white cables at the top, and we thought, well, instead of having to like core new holes and get new pathways, we would just put one switch there. And then, the AV stuff, you can't see that it's on the side. There's like 3 racks of AV gear that was feeding that players lounge in the previous slides. Those guys decided, well, we're going to use your switches too, followed by this AV, and then lighting, And then it seemed like there were some panels or something like that. So basically, we're 3 switches in, and if you were to look at that today, every port is plugged in. And that poor little UPS that we put in the bottom for 1 switch, it's way oversubscribed. There's no way that thing's going to hold up 2 universal PoE switches and then another PoE switch. So, and then you can see where some of the vendors put their own patch panel in, so they've kind of like locked that UPS in the bottom, so we're not going to be able to get it out with a lot of work. So, and then some days I feel like they're just messing with me, like putting things on the walls, putting them by the lights. So that's it.